Commander Jack Harrison stepped through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His boots made soft, clicking sounds on the smooth crystal floor. Above him, the ceiling stretched so high he could barely see it. Strange lights floated in the air, casting shadows that moved on their own. 7 alien species ruled this part of space. They sat on thrones arranged in a half circle, looking down at him. Jack had been to this chamber 3 times before, but it always made him feel small. The aliens were so different from humans. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like they were made of living metal. The biggest one leaned forward. His name was Korth, and he belonged to a species called the Vrexians. He stood nearly 10 feet tall with 4 eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. His mouth had mandibles that clicked when he spoke. "You understand why you have been summoned, human?" Korth's voice boomed across the chamber. Jack kept his face calm, even though his heart was beating faster. "I'm afraid I don't, Counselor. Earth has followed every rule since we joined the Council. We've honored our trade agreements and stayed inside our borders." A sound like laughter rippled through the aliens. Korth's mandibles clicked together. "Honored agreements? Maybe. But you have hidden the truth about your weapons." Jack tried not to show any emotion. "We've sent you all the required papers about our defense forces." "Defense forces? Yes," another voice said. This one belonged to Counselor Vex, a long serpent-like creature with purple scales that changed color when the light hit them. "But what about your weapon development? Our spies tell us that Earth has weapons far more powerful than what you told us about." Jack allowed himself a tiny smile. "With respect, Counselor, every species keeps some military secrets. That's normal." Korth slammed his massive fist down on the arm of his throne. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Normal practice does not include weapons that break the threshold accords. We have proof, Commander Harrison, that humanity has built kinetic weapons of terrible power." Jack's mind raced. The Council knew something, but how much? He needed to be careful. "I'm not allowed to talk about classified military programs." "Then perhaps this will change your mind." Korth waved one of his massive hands, and a holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed fuzzy video footage of what looked like a weapons test. A railgun fired a projectile that tore through 3 old spaceships in a single shot. The projectile moved so fast it was almost invisible. "Where did you get this?" Jack demanded. "That doesn't matter," Vex hissed, his scales turning darker. "What matters is that weapons like this in human hands are a threat to Council stability. You will give us complete information about all kinetic weapon systems, or Earth's membership will be suspended while we investigate." Jack straightened his shoulders and stood as tall as he could. "I'll need to talk to my superiors." "You have 48 hours, Korth declared. His 4 eyes fixed on Jack with an intensity that was hard to meet. "The Council will meet again to hear Earth's response. We suggest you choose to cooperate, Commander. The alternative would be unfortunate for your species." As Jack turned to leave the chamber, he noticed something important. The way the counselors watched him wasn't just suspicious. They looked scared. These powerful aliens who ruled dozens of star systems were actually afraid of what humanity might have created. Jack walked down the long hallway toward his ship. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Amy Chen, was waiting for him at the entrance. She could tell from his face that the meeting hadn't gone well. "Sir?" she asked quietly. "They know about the railguns," Jack said in a low voice. "Someone leaked information about the Chimera test." Amy's eyes went wide. "How much do they know?" "Not everything, but enough to be worried." Jack glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "We need to get back to Earth Command immediately. The Admiral needs to hear about this." They walked quickly to their shuttle. Jack's mind was spinning with questions. Who had leaked the information? How long had the Council been watching them? And most importantly, what would Earth do now? The shuttle lifted off from the Council's orbital station and headed toward the jump point that would take them home. Through the window, Jack could see the massive space station growing smaller. It was beautiful in a strange way, all curves and colors that didn't exist in nature. Amy broke the silence. "Sir, what do you think they'll do if we don't comply?" Jack considered the question carefully. They might kick us out of the council, or worse, they might decide we're too dangerous and try to force us to give up our weapons. Can they do that? The council has a combined fleet of over 10,000 warships. Earth has maybe 300. If they wanted to force the issue, they probably could. Jack paused. But that's not what worries me. What does worry you? The fact that they're scared, Jack said. The council has maintained peace for thousands of years by making sure no one species is too powerful. They've seen the footage of our railguns and it terrifies them. That means either our weapons are more effective than we thought, or their weapons are less effective than we believed. Amy thought about this. So showing them our full capabilities might actually make things worse, or it might make them think twice about pushing us around. Jack shrugged. Nah, that's what the Admiral will have to decide. The shuttle reached the jump point and engaged its faster-than-light drive. Space twisted around them in ways that made Jack's stomach feel strange, and then they were hurtling through the void toward Earth. Jack leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. In 48 hours, Earth would have to make a choice that could determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. They could give in to the Council's demands and hope for the best. They could refuse and risk conflict with civilizations far older and more established than their own. Or they could find a third option that no one had considered yet. Whatever happened, Jack knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't give up their security easily. They had survived wars, plagues, and near extinction on their own world. They had crawled up from the ashes of nuclear war to reach the stars, and they had done it all while building weapons that could defend them against any threat. The Council wanted to know about Earth's secret arsenal. Soon enough, they would get their answer. Jack just hoped everyone would survive the revelation. Admiral Patricia Cole walked back and forth in the secure briefing room deep inside Earth's orbital command station. Around the long metal table sat the Joint Chiefs and several civilians from the World Defense Initiative. Jack Harrison had just finished telling them everything that happened at the council meeting. "So they know about the railguns," said General Raymond Foster. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. "The question is, well, what else have they figured out?" "According to our intelligence, not much," replied Dr. Helen Grant. She was the chief scientist for the World Defense Initiative. Her fingers moved quickly across a tablet, and blueprints appeared on the wall. The blueprints were marked with red stamps that said, "Classified." The footage Commander Harrison saw was from the Chimera test. That test was supposed to happen in a dead zone where nobody could see it. Either someone talked, or the Council has better sensors than we thought. Patricia stopped walking and looked at the blueprints on the wall. The Chimera railgun system was impressive. It could shoot metal projectiles at incredible speeds, but it was far from Earth's most dangerous secret. "We need to decide how much to show them. If we reveal everything, they'll force us to destroy it all. If we show them too little, they might attack us first." "There's a third option," said Colonel Danny Morris. He was in charge of the Special Weapons Division, and he had a reputation for creative thinking. "We show them just enough to make them scared of pushing us too hard." "You want to intimidate them?" Patricia raised one eyebrow. "I want to remind them why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars," Danny replied. His voice was firm. "We didn't get here by giving up every time someone stronger made demands. The Council respects strength." Helen shook her head. Her gray hair caught the light from the projector. "The Council respects order and predictability. They built their entire civilization on everyone agreeing and advancing technology slowly. Our weapons development is exponentially faster than theirs. That's what scares them." "Then maybe it's time they understood the full picture," Jack said. "Not just what we've built, but why we built it." Patricia thought about this carefully. Humanity's rapid weapons development wasn't because humans were aggressive. It was born from necessity. For the first 200 years after humans invented faster-than-light travel, Earth had been alone in the galaxy. They had prepared for contact with unknown forces. By the time they found the Council, humans had turned defensive preparation into an art form. "All right," Patricia decided, "we'll give them a demonstration. Something controlled but clear. Danny, prepare the Cascade system for a limited test. Helen, I want you to make a presentation about our defensive philosophy. Make sure they understand these weapons were never meant for conquest. What about the Ghost Fleet? Raymond asked quietly. Everyone in the room went silent. The Ghost Fleet was humanity's deepest secret. It was a network of robot warships hidden throughout the solar system. They were designed to turn on automatically if Earth was ever attacked. Even most of the military didn't know the full details of the program. That stays classified, Patricia said firmly. Some secrets are worth keeping. Helen looked worried. Admiral, if we're going to demonstrate our capabilities, we need to think about the message we're sending. The Council already thinks we're dangerous. If we show them too much firepower, they might decide to strike before we get any stronger. And if we show them too little, they'll think we're bluffing and push harder, Danny countered. We need to find the balance between deterrence and provocation. Patricia sat down at the head of the table. Let me ask you all something. What do you think the Council is really afraid of? Jack spoke first. They're afraid we'll upset the balance of power. For thousands of years, they've maintained peace by making sure no one species can dominate the others. We're the new variable they can't control. Exactly, Patricia said. So we need to show them that our weapons don't change that balance. They're purely defensive. We have no interest in conquering anyone. How do we prove that? Raymond asked. Words won't convince them. Actions will, Helen said slowly. She was starting to understand Patricia's thinking. We demonstrate our weapons, but we also demonstrate our restraint. We show them we could destroy their test targets in a dozen different ways, but we choose the most precise and controlled methods. Danny nodded. We make it clear that we have power, but also discipline. That's what they need to see. Patricia stood up again. All right, here's what we're going to do. We'll invite the Council to a neutral zone for a demonstration. We'll use derelict ships as targets. Nothing that could be mistaken for an attack. We'll show them 3 systems. First, the Chimera railguns, since they already know about those. Second, the Cascade missile swarm, to demonstrate our ability to overwhelm defenses with numbers. Third, the Hellfire-directed energy system, to show them we're not limited to kinetic weapons. That's a lot of cards to put on the table, Raymond said. It is, Patricia agreed. But we're also going to explain the philosophy behind each system. Helen, your presentation needs to emphasize that every one of these weapons was developed during our 2 centuries of isolation. We built them not knowing what was out there. Now that we know the galaxy is relatively peaceful, we maintain them as insurance, not as tools for aggression. Jack thought about the plan. What if they still demand we disarm? Then we refuse, Patricia said simply. We'll offer transparency. We'll agree to inspections. We'll sign treaties promising never to use these weapons offensively. But we won't give up the only thing that guarantees our sovereignty. Danny leaned forward. There's a risk they'll see that as an ultimatum. It is an ultimatum, Patricia said. A polite one, but an ultimatum nonetheless. When we're telling them that Earth's security is not negotiable, they can either accept us as we are, or we'll go our own way. Helen looked concerned. If we leave the Council, we lose access to their trade networks, their technology exchanges, their diplomatic protections. True, Patricia acknowledged. But we also maintained our independence before we joined the Council. We can do it again if necessary. Our ancestors survived worse than economic isolation. Raymond drummed his fingers on the table. When do we schedule this demonstration? As soon as possible, Patricia said. We have 48 hours to respond. I want to use that time to our advantage. We'll send a message to the Council tonight inviting them to observe our defensive capabilities in 36 hours. That gives us time to prepare. Some, but not so much time that they can organize a military response if they decide to react badly. I'll start coordinating with the weapons platforms, Danny said. I'll prepare the presentation materials, Helen added. Jack stood up. What do you want me to do, Admiral? Patricia looked at him. You're going to be our liaison with the Council. You've already established a rapport with them, even if it's a tense one. I want you to personally deliver the invitation and answer any preliminary questions they might have. Make it clear this is an olive branch, not a threat. Understood, Jack said. As the meeting broke up and people started filing out of the room, Patricia called Jack back. Commander, a word? Jack waited until everyone else had left. Yes, Admiral? How scared did they look? Patricia asked. The Council members. When they showed you that footage, how afraid were they? Jack thought back to the meeting. Genuinely terrified, I think. Especially Korth. He tried to hide it with anger, but I could see it in his eyes. Patricia nodded slowly. Good. Fear can be useful if we manage it correctly. Scared people make mistakes, but they also listen more carefully. Our job over the next few days is to channel that fear into respect instead of hostility. And if we can't? Jack asked. Patricia's expression hardened. Then we remind them why Earth survived long enough to join their council in the first place. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy, Jack, but we might be the most stubborn. And sometimes stubbornness is its own kind of strength. The neutral zone between Earth's territory and council space looked like a field of diamonds. Observation platforms floated in the darkness, their lights twinkling against the black backdrop of space. Representatives from all 7 council species had gathered to watch humanity's response to their ultimatum. Jack Harrison stood on the observation deck of the ESS Valiant, watching the video feeds with a knot in his stomach. "Are we certain about this?" asked Lieutenant Amy Chen. She stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back in a formal military stance. "No," Jack admitted. "But backing down isn't an option. The moment we show weakness, they'll walk all over us." On the main view screen, Admiral Patricia Cole appeared from Earth Command. She looked calm and professional in her dark blue uniform. "Gentlemen, ladies, and honored council members, thank you for accepting our invitation. Yet rather than submit paperwork that you might find incomplete or suspicious, we've decided to demonstrate several of our defensive systems in a controlled environment." Korth's massive face appeared on a split screen. His 4 eyes were narrowed in what looked like suspicion. "This is highly irregular, Admiral. So is demanding a member species reveal all military secrets," Patricia replied smoothly. "We're offering transparency on our terms. I suggest you watch closely." At her signal, a series of old broken spaceships were towed into position at different distances. They ranged from small corvettes to a massive cargo hauler that was bigger than most military vessels. The Council had donated these wrecks from their salvage operations. Now they would serve as targets. First demonstration. Our Chimera-class railgun system. Patricia nodded to her weapons officer somewhere off-screen. A flash of light erupted from a nearby weapons platform. The tungsten projectile moved so fast that the cameras barely caught it. One frame showed the round leaving the barrel. The next frame showed the corvette at the near position simply disappearing. The ship didn't explode in the traditional sense. It was torn apart at the molecular level by pure kinetic energy. Metal twisted and shattered. Pieces flew in all directions. The council observers went completely quiet. Jack could see their faces on the monitors, frozen in shock. "Range was 2,000 kilometers, Patricia explained. Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was describing a simple household tool. Time to target was 0.3 seconds. Projectile velocity was 12% the speed of light. The Chimera system can fire 1 round every 6 seconds and maintain accuracy at up to 5,000 kilometers. "This is beyond threshold limits," Vex protested. His purple scales had turned almost black. "You must cease this immediately." "We're just getting started, Counselor," Patricia interrupted. Second demonstration, Cascade Missile Swarm. This time, dozens of launch tubes opened on multiple platforms around the testing area. What looked like regular missiles streaked toward the mid-range targets. Then each missile split into 20 smaller parts. Those parts split again. Within seconds, a cloud of hundreds of small intelligent warheads swarmed the target ships like angry insects. The derelict ships were taken apart piece by piece. The missiles didn't just destroy them, and they systematically dismantled them with surgical precision. Engines exploded first, then weapon systems, then life support. Finally, the bridge sections crumpled under concentrated strikes. It was a coordinated dance of destruction that looked almost beautiful in its efficiency. "Each Cascade missile costs less than a Council fighter craft," Patricia explained. "They're designed to overwhelm defensive systems through sheer numbers and smart targeting. We have stockpiles numbering in the millions." Jack watched the Council representatives' faces cycle through different emotions. Shock gave way to fear. Fear mixed with anger. He could see them whispering to each other, probably trying to figure out how to respond. Amy leaned close to Jack. "Sir, look at Counselor Exora." She pointed to the crystalline being on one of the screens. The alien was literally glowing with distress, changing colors rapidly. Final demonstration, Patricia announced. Hellfire-directed energy system. The weapons platform rotated slowly, revealing a collection of focusing arrays that began to glow with building energy. The glow got brighter and brighter until it was almost painful to look at. When the system fired, it wasn't a single beam. It was a web of laser fire that converged on the distant cargo hauler. For 3 full seconds, the concentrated energy played across the ship's hull like water from a hose. But this water melted metal. The massive vessel's armor plating began to run like liquid wax. Support beams buckled and twisted. Then, the entire structure collapsed in on itself, folding like paper. Effective range is 10,000 kilometers, Patricia said. The system draws power from a compact fusion reactor and can sustain fire for approximately 2 minutes before requiring a cooling cycle. She looked directly at Korth's image on the screen. These are our defensive systems, Counselor. We developed them not for conquest, but because we spent 2 centuries alone in the universe. We were preparing for whatever we might find out here. When we encountered the Council, we were relieved to find civilized beings interested in cooperation. We've maintained these weapons not out of aggression, but because our history taught us that the price of peace is eternal vigilance. You speak of defense, Korth said. His voice was shaking with barely controlled rage. But what you have shown us is the capacity for complete annihilation. How are we to trust that Earth will not use these weapons to dominate the Council? Jack felt his stomach tighten. This was the critical moment. They had shown their teeth. Now they needed to prove they weren't mad dogs. On another screen, Dr. Helen Grant appeared in a presentation room. Behind her, historical images began to appear. Ancient Earth divided into warring nations. Nuclear weapons detonating in tests. Then the terrible devastation of World War III. The Council species developed space travel while your worlds were largely unified, Helen began. Her voice was gentle but firm. Humanity's path was different. We reached for the stars while still fighting among ourselves. By the time we achieved faster-than-light capability, we'd already brought our species to the brink of extinction twice. The images shifted to show the reconstruction after the Third World War, the formation of the world government, the first colony ships leaving Earth's orbit. We learned something in those dark years, Helen continued. We learned that the greatest danger to any civilization is not external threats, but internal division. So we built weapons, yes, but we also built institutions designed to prevent us from ever using them against ourselves. The same discipline that keeps us from destroying each other is what keeps these weapons from being used offensively. Words, Vex hissed. His scales were still dark with agitation. You speak of discipline and defense, but we see only power that could reshape the galaxy to your whim. Then let me ask you this, Helen replied calmly. Earth has been a council member for 37 years. In that time, have we ever threatened another species? Have we ever used our military strength to force our will on others? Have we ever violated council law or crossed territorial boundaries without permission? The counselors exchanged glances. None of them answered. We haven't, Helen answered her own question, because despite what our weapons might suggest, humanity genuinely wants peace. But we want it on terms that allow us to remain sovereign and secure. We've seen what happens when civilizations disarm in the name of trust. Our own history is filled with examples of peaceful peoples conquered by aggressive neighbors. General Raymond Foster's image appeared beside Helen's. The Council maintains peace through consensus and mutual economic dependence. That's admirable, and it's worked for you for thousands of years. But it only works because none of your species has a significant military advantage over the others. You're asking Earth to give up the only thing that guarantees our sovereignty isn't dependent on your goodwill. You fear we might abuse our power, Patricia added. We fear being defenseless in a galaxy where we're newcomers, surrounded by ancient civilizations. Both fears are valid. The question is whether we can find a middle ground. Korth was silent for a long moment, his massive form hunched forward as if the weight of the decision was physically pressing down on him. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its anger. What middle ground do you propose, Admiral Cole? Jack held his breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Patricia took a deep breath before answering. She knew this moment would define Earth's relationship with the Council for decades to come. Transparency, but not disarmament, she said clearly. We'll provide detailed information about our defensive capabilities. That includes theoretical maximum outputs and strategic deployments. We'll submit to regular inspections of our weapons platforms. In exchange, the Council acknowledges Earth's right to maintain a military force proportional to our security needs, as determined by us, not by Council mandate. And if we refuse? Vex asked. His serpentine body coiled tighter around his throne. Then we maintain our current position, Patricia replied without hesitation. We'll continue to honor Council law and our existing agreements, but we won't compromise our security. If that means our membership is suspended, so be it. We survived alone in the universe before. We can do it again. Jack felt sweat forming on his palms. They were gambling everything on the Council's rationality. They were betting that the threat of Earth becoming an independent military power outside Council influence would be worse than accepting humanity as an armed member state. Counselor Ixora chimed suddenly, her crystalline body vibrating with sound. This is unprecedented. Never in Council history has a member species maintained such disproportionate military strength. Never in Council history has a member species joined after developing in complete isolation, Helen countered. Earth's situation is unique. Our response to that situation has been shaped by our unique history. Your history of violence and war, another counselor said. This one was a furry being named Tolm, who rarely spoke. You destroyed your own world multiple times before reaching the stars. Yes, we did, Helen admitted, and we learned from those mistakes. Every weapon system you saw today has multiple safeguards built in. Human operators must authorize their use. Our military operates under strict civilian oversight. We have international treaties that govern when and how these weapons can be deployed. We didn't just build destructive tools, we built a framework to control them. Jack watched Korth carefully. The massive Vrexian was the real decision-maker here. The other counselors would follow his lead. Korth's 4 eyes were moving between the different screens, processing information. You ask for trust, Korth said slowly, but trust must be earned over time. How do we know that in 50 years or 100, Earth will not decide that Council membership is more burden than benefit? What prevents you from using these weapons to carve out your own empire? Patricia leaned forward. The same thing that's prevented us from doing it for the past 37 years. Self-interest. Earth benefits enormously from Council membership. We have access to technologies we couldn't develop alone. We have trading partners across dozens of systems. We have diplomatic relationships that open doors across the galaxy. Why would we throw all that away for short-term military advantage? Civilizations change, Vex said quietly. Governments rise and fall. What seems rational today may seem foolish tomorrow. That's true for any species, Raymond Foster pointed out. What prevents the Vrexians from deciding to conquer their neighbors? What stops the Silith from using their biotechnology to create superweapons? Every civilization has the capacity for aggression. The Council exists because you all chose cooperation over conflict. We're making the same choice, Amy whispered to Jack. Do you think they're buying it? I don't know, Jack whispered back, but we don't have a better argument. On the main screen, the counselors were conferring among themselves. Their microphones were muted, but Jack could see animated discussions happening. Ixora was glowing bright colors. Tolm was gesturing with his furry arms. Vex's scales were shifting through different shades. Finally, Korth raised one massive hand. The other counselors fell silent. The Council will need time to deliberate on this proposal. We cannot make such a decision hastily. We understand, Patricia said. How much time do you need? 3 days, Korth replied. We will reconvene in 72 hours with our answer. The screens went dark. The demonstration was over. Jack felt his shoulders relax slightly. At least they hadn't rejected the proposal outright. Could have gone worse, Amy said. Could have gone better too, Jack replied. Patricia's face appeared on a private channel. Commander Harrison, return to Earth Command immediately. We need to prepare for every possible outcome. Yes, Admiral, Jack said. The Valiant detached from the observation platform and began its journey back to Earth. Jack sat in his quarters, staring out at the stars. 3 days. In 3 days, they would know whether Earth remained part of the galactic community or became an isolated power. He thought about what Korth had said. Trust must be earned over time. That was true. But how could they earn trust while maintaining the weapons that made the Council nervous? It seemed like an impossible balance. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Amy entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jack. "Thought you might need this, sir." "Thanks." Jack took a sip. It was strong and bitter, exactly how he liked it. "What's your honest assessment, Amy? Did we make things better or worse today?" Amy sat down across from him. "I think we showed them we're serious about maintaining our defenses. Whether that translates to respect or fear, I can't say." "Fear and respect aren't mutually exclusive," Jack said. "Sometimes they go hand in hand." "Do you think the Admiral has a backup plan, in case the Council rejects our proposal?" Jack nodded slowly. "Patricia always has backup plans. The question is whether any of them are good options." They sat in silence for a moment, drinking their coffee and watching the stars stream past the window. "Can I ask you something, sir?" Amy said. "Do you think we're right to hold on to these weapons? I mean, really right? Not just strategically smart, but morally right?" Jack considered the question carefully. "I think we're right to not let others dictate our security. Whether the specific weapons are moral, that's a harder question. But the alternative is trusting our survival to the goodwill of civilizations we barely know. Our ancestors tried that approach on Earth. It didn't usually end well for the trusting party." "But we're not on Earth anymore," Amy pointed out. "The Council isn't like the old empires. They've maintained peace for thousands of years." "They've maintained peace among themselves," Jack corrected. "We don't know how they'd treat a member species that was completely defenseless. Maybe they'd be benevolent. Maybe not. I'd rather not find out." Amy nodded thoughtfully. "I suppose that's the real issue. It's not about whether the Council is trustworthy right now. It's about whether they'll stay trustworthy forever." "Exactly," Jack said. "And nothing stays the same forever." Back on Earth, Patricia was meeting with the President and the Security Council. The mood in the room was tense. What are our options if they reject the proposal?" the President asked. "3 main scenarios," Patricia replied. "Best case, they accept our terms with minor modifications. We maintain our weapons and our Council membership. Middle case, they suspend our membership but don't take military action. We become independent but maintain informal relationships. Worst case, they decide we're too dangerous and move to forcibly disarm us." Could they succeed in forcibly disarming us? Patricia exchanged glances with Raymond. "In a straight military conflict, the Council's combined fleet outnumbers us significantly. But it wouldn't be a clean victory. We'd inflict heavy casualties, and if they pushed us too hard, there's always the Ghost Fleet." The President's face went pale. "Sam, you're not seriously suggesting we'd activate the Ghost Fleet against the Council?" "I'm suggesting that if they tried to destroy Earth, the Ghost Fleet would activate automatically," Patricia said. "That's what it was designed for. It doesn't distinguish between alien threats and Council fleets. An attack is an attack." "Then we need to make absolutely certain the Council understands that," the President said firmly. "If they're going to reject our proposal, they need to know the full consequences." Patricia nodded. "I was thinking the same thing. If they reconvene in 3 days, we might need to reveal one more secret. Not the full extent of the Ghost Fleet, but enough to make them understand that attacking Earth isn't a viable option." "You want to tell them about the automated defenses?" "Only if necessary," Patricia said. "It's our final card. But if they're leaning toward military action, it might be the thing that changes their minds." Raymond looked worried. "Once we tell them about autonomous weapon systems, there's no going back. They'll be even more afraid of us." "True," Patricia agreed. "But better afraid and cautious than confident and aggressive." 3 days passed slowly. Jack Harrison barely slept during that time. He spent his hours reviewing intelligence reports, running scenarios, and trying to predict how the Council would respond. When the call finally came to return to the Council chamber, He felt relief mixed with dread. Once again, Jack stood before the seven thrones. This time, Admiral Patricia Cole and Dr. Helen Grant stood beside him as holographic projections. The atmosphere in the chamber felt different than before, less openly hostile but still tense. Korth spoke first. His voice was measured and careful. The Council has deliberated on Earth's proposal. Your demonstration was effective in conveying your capabilities, perhaps too effective. We showed you a fraction of our arsenal, Patricia said quietly. We felt honesty was preferable to allowing your imagination to run wild. A fraction? Counselor Exora chimed with alarm. Her crystalline body flashed bright red. You possess weapons even more powerful than what we witnessed? Yes, Patricia admitted. But before you panic, you should understand something about Earth's defensive strategy. Dr. Grant, if you would. Helen stepped forward in her holographic form. She manipulated a display that showed a complex network diagram. Our most powerful weapons are not the ones designed for direct confrontation. They're deterrents. Systems so devastating that their very existence prevents conflict. We call it the Ghost Fleet Protocol. Jack watched as the counselors leaned forward. Their attention was completely fixed on the display. Throughout Earth's solar system, we maintain a network of autonomous warships, Helen explained carefully. They're powered down and hidden in asteroid fields, at Lagrange points, and in deep space. Under normal circumstances, they're completely inert. But they're programmed with one absolute directive. If Earth is attacked and our conventional defenses are overcome, they activate automatically and respond with overwhelming force. Autonomous weapons? Vex sounded horrified. His scales turned almost white. You've created machines that can wage war without human oversight? Not quite, Helen corrected. They can't initiate conflict. They can only respond to an attack on Earth itself, and they're coded with strict rules of engagement based on centuries of military doctrine and ethics. They won't target civilian populations or pursue retreating forces beyond our defensive perimeter. But within those constraints, yes, they will defend Earth with everything they have. This is insane, Exora chimed. What if they malfunction? What if they mistake peaceful ships for threats? They won't, Helen said with quiet confidence. We've tested the system for decades. The artificial intelligence is sophisticated enough to distinguish between genuine threats and false positives. More importantly, the Ghost Fleet has never activated, because Earth has never been attacked. The system exists purely as a guarantee. Attack us, and you'll face not just our active military, but an automated defense network that doesn't tire, doesn't retreat, and doesn't stop until the threat is neutralized or it's destroyed. Jack saw understanding dawn on some of the counselors' faces. This wasn't just about weapons. It was about creating a situation where attacking Earth was simply irrational, no matter how powerful the aggressor might be. You're describing mutually assured destruction, Korth said slowly, a concept we thought your species had abandoned after your world wars. We abandoned it as a strategy for managing conflicts between human nations, Patricia agreed. But as a deterrent against external extinction-level threats, it remains sound. While no one can conquer Earth without paying a price so high that victory would be meaningless. And you believe this makes you safer? Vex asked. You don't see how this terrifies those who might otherwise be your friends? We understand your fear, Jack said, speaking up for the first time. But consider this from our perspective. We're one species, one world, surrounded by 7 civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. You have history, alliances, and cultural ties that span millennia. We have each other and our weapons. If we give those up, what guarantee do we have that you won't simply dictate terms to us whenever it's convenient? The Council has never subjugated a member species, Exora protested. No, but you've never had a member species that was militarily weak enough to make subjugation easy, Patricia countered. We don't doubt your current good intentions. We doubt that those intentions will remain unchanged across centuries of shifting galactic politics. Our weapons aren't aimed at you. They're insurance against an uncertain future. The chamber fell into a heavy silence. Jack could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. Finally, Korth rose from his throne. His massive form seemed less threatening than before. I believe I understand now why this has been so difficult. The Council operates on trust built over millennia. Humanity operates on verified deterrence built over centuries of hard lessons. These philosophies are not easily reconciled. They don't have to be, Patricia said. We're not asking you to adopt our way of thinking. We're asking you to accept that different species may require different approaches to security. Earth will never initiate aggression against Council members. We'll put that in writing with inspection protocols and automatic penalties if we violate the agreement, but we won't disarm based on promises of protection from governments we've known for less than 4 decades. Korth looked at his fellow counselors. Something unspoken passed between them. Jack could see subtle gestures and color changes that probably meant something in their various cultures. The Council will accept Earth's proposal, Korth announced, with 2 modifications. First, you will provide not just information about your weapons, but regular reports on any new systems development. Second, the inspection protocols will include representatives from all Council species, and not just observers from a single world. Acceptable, Patricia agreed immediately. However, Korth continued, we must also address the larger implication of your revelation. If Earth can develop such weapons in a few centuries, what prevents other species from doing the same? The Council has maintained peace by ensuring no member has overwhelming military superiority. Your arsenal disrupts that balance. Jack felt his heart sink. They had won their immediate battle but potentially created a larger problem. Unless, Vex interjected thoughtfully, we change our perspective. Perhaps the Council has been wrong to view military strength as inherently destabilizing. Earth has demonstrated that advanced weapons can coexist with peaceful intentions, if the civilization wielding them has sufficient internal discipline. You're suggesting we encourage an arms race? Exora sounded skeptical. I'm suggesting we acknowledge reality, Vex replied. Earth has shown us that our assumptions about technology and security were based on our own cultural evolution, not on universal law. If other species wish to develop stronger defenses, perhaps we should permit it, provided they agree to the same transparency and inspection protocols we're establishing with humanity. Korth's mandibles clicked together in thoughtful consideration. An interesting proposal. It would fundamentally change the Council's nature, from a collective that enforces parity to one that manages diverse military capabilities through mutual oversight. It would be more work, Patricia admitted, but it might also be more stable in the long run. Fear of what others might be hiding breeds suspicion. Transparency, even about frightening capabilities, builds a different kind of trust. The discussion continued for hours. They hammered out details about inspection schedules, reporting requirements, and mutual defense protocols. But Jack could sense that the fundamental crisis had passed. Earth wouldn't have to choose between security and membership. The Council wouldn't have to choose between accepting a militarized member or pushing humanity into isolation. When the session finally ended, Jack found himself walking back to the Valiant with Amy beside him. We actually did it, Amy said quietly. We kept our weapons and our council seat. For now, Jack replied. But this is just the beginning. We'll be under constant scrutiny. One mistake, one perceived threat, and this whole arrangement could collapse. Do you think the other species will really start developing their own weapons? Jack shrugged. Some will, others won't. But the Council will never be quite the same. We've changed the rules just by existing. As they boarded the shuttle, Jack looked back at the Council chamber one last time. They had come here expecting confrontation, possibly even the end of Earth's galactic partnerships. Instead, they had sparked a conversation about the nature of security and trust that might change the Council forever. Earth's secret arsenal had indeed sent the Council into panic. But sometimes, Jack thought, a little fear was the beginning of wisdom. And wisdom, eventually, might lead to something better than either enforced weakness or hidden strength. A genuine mutual respect between beings who understood each other's fears and chose cooperation anyway. The shuttle lifted off and turned toward home. Somewhere out in the dark, the ghost fleet waited in silence. A promise and a warning written in steel and code. Jack hoped they would never need to activate. But he slept better knowing they were there, standing guard while humanity learned to navigate a galaxy full of neighbors who were slowly becoming friends.